Hi everyone, and welcome back to Rough Rider, where every week I talk writing, self-publishing, and making it as an author. So I just read From Devils and Sunday Hats, my general fiction novel, but since I'm constantly saying that I'm a libertarian sci-fi author, maybe I should actually read from my sci-fi book, which is the Aetherverse. I co-wrote this with my best friend, Eugene. We've known each other since college. All the language is mine, like I did the actual writing, but the ideas are both of ours. So I always credit him for everything that is part of this universe, whether it's this book or the short stories that come with it. It's extremely political and it doesn't really pull any punches. So I would say if you are a particularly left-wing person, not like just kind of liberal, but I mean like far left, don't read this because you're not going to like it. Anyway, I'm going to be reading the first scene from this book. Nothing political in that one. It doesn't really get political until maybe a third of the way through the book. But it just starts out with some action. So unlike Devils and Sunday Hats, which is a really like kind of interpersonal drama with a lot of family issues, this one is a plot-driven novel. Devils and Sunday Hats is very character-driven. This is not. So there's a lot of action, there's a lot of political intrigue, and there's like a lot of ideological statements. Devils and Sunday Hats, it has its message, but it's nothing like this. So there is a prologue, but I'm going to skip that. I'm just going to read the first scene. A silver bullet flashed from east to west between the shining towers of the skyline. It dutifully served its role with urgency, transporting productive passengers across the cityscape. They boarded and disembarked to the ebb and flow of life's central tides, work and family all fulfilling. But on that fateful day, everything changed. Something dangerous had joined them on the 5 o'clock train. It was one of those evils they thought they'd never see in Chesapeake, surely not so close to home. Its presence brought only chaos. As a marshal of the Colonial judiciary, I order you to stand down. The commuters were deafeningly silent. They heard only the wind rushing past the maglev car and the resonating hum of the track. In the distance, Neo-Georgian skyscrapers caught the sunlight and glinted through the windows. The light flickered across the passengers' faces. It left the hunter squinting and his target obscured by white and gold. With his gun drawn on the crowded train pointed straight at the fugitive, Colonial Marshal Natharis Ruke stood his ground. His target didn't stop or look back. The criminal reached for the door. It slid open with a hiss and a jolt. He meant to pass on to the next car. In any other situation, Natharis would have opened fire. But with civilians crouching on the floor, heads covered, he hesitated. The marshal followed, pushing past the huddled passengers. They'd begun to stand back up, but the threat remained. The next car was in danger, then the next. Natharis heard the screams of children and the grunts of commuters knocked to the floor. Briefcases and luggage obstructed his path, dropped by panicked riders. His target was well ahead of him. He could see him through the open door. The two cars before him were a treacherous gauntlet. Next stop, Vega 1 Tower, 389 72nd Avenue. The maglev decelerated and the windows darkened. They'd entered the sky station on the upper floors of the tower. Throngs of business people stood waiting at the edge of the platform, unaware of the bedlam aboard the incoming train. Natharis kept running. The fugitive stood at the doors and paused until a bell tone ushered in the new passengers. He seized the opportunity and barreled through the crowd. Natharis dodged unsuspecting men and women in suits out onto the platform. Some jumped out of his path, while others were pushed away. But in the confusion, the criminal vanished. Natharis stopped but didn't catch his breath. The people around him hid his target better than any camouflage. He heard the bell tone again, and the doors closed. And behind the sliding glass stood the infamous Jeffrey McCain, convinced he'd evaded arrest. Natharis heard the buzzing of the rails flare up and the maglev accelerated. He caught sight of a utility ladder mounted to the side of the car, and with no time to waste on caution, he lunged at it and gripped it tightly. The train shot out of the building and out into the sunlight. His legs dangled in the rushing air, but he caught his foot on the rungs and pushed himself up. The wind whipped past as he sprinted down the length of the shining chrome cars. He kept his eye on the access hatch ahead of him and didn't look down. The sight of the bustling streets hundreds of feet below would have thrown off his balance. The blasting of the wind in his ears covered the clap of the hatch as it smacked against the metal roof. Gripping the lip tightly, Natharis jumped down into the car, landing flat-footed on the floor. He was in the utility room that preceded the conductor's cabin. Mops and cleaning supplies lined the shelves to his left and right, the light from the side exit reflecting off a puddle of spilt sanitary solution. Natharis approached the door ahead. Next stop, World Builder Enterprises, Roanoke Square. The interior lights activated, but the maglev didn't slow down. Men and women standing at the platform's edge jumped back in alarm as it flew through the sky station at full speed. As quickly as the windows had gone dark, the daylight shone back through. Natharis scowled, realizing that the fugitive had disabled the automated brakes. He expected the conductor was unconscious, and he hoped to heaven he hadn't been killed. Without his command of the train, they would barrel through every coming station and hasten their arrival at the terrorists' destination. Natharis tore open the door and laid eyes upon McCain. He stood at the control panel and ignored the intruder, though he must have heard his hunter's entry. The conductor sat on the floor, his back to the wall, head low. A gritty smear of blood ran down the wall above him. Natharis was too late. He cursed himself for it. Next stop, Thomas Jefferson Plaza, Central Business District. Jeffrey McCain turned his head and caught eyes with Natharis, who'd only briefly paused. Coming was the heart of Chesapeake's business district, no doubt McCain's intended target. The terrorist raised his firearm. He reached his hand behind him for the emergency brake. "It is Lacaz's will," he coldly professed, "and I am his slave." He pulled the brake and the train came to a lurching halt. Natharis tumbled forward and caught his fall on the control panel, but when he found his balance, McCain had already fled the room. A warm gust of wind gave him away. He'd opened the side exit door. By the time Natharis dashed back, he was gone. Natharis peered over the edge of the doorframe toward the busy streets below. McCain must have jumped. The train had come to a stop in an auspicious place. 50 feet below the front cars was a wide overhang protruding from the skyscraper beside them. It jutted out from below a row of mirrored windows, studded with small ventilation pipes bursting with hot air. And there, at the edge of the platform, crawled Jeffrey McCain, with one leg limp and soaked in blood. Natharis had no choice but to jump. He took a deep breath. With memories of military training clear in his mind, he leapt from the train. The fall was quiet, almost tranquil, like the unexpected eye of a storm. When the platform surface was just below him, he curled his body, hit the ground with a roll, and sprung up standing. He'd passed that test on the first try years earlier. McCain had managed to stand, his weight shifted onto his better leg, with a rifle in his hands drawn from beneath his heavy overcoat. The terrorist didn't delay. He fired a shot, but there was no bullet. A cable spiraled across the street and struck the adjacent building, Thomas Jefferson Plaza, with its barracks of offices. McCain tossed the rifle aside and clipped the cord onto his belt. Immediately, the cable withdrew, and he was pulled off the platform edge up into the air. He was well out of Natharis' range. Swallowing his pride, Natharis requested drone support via radio. And as McCain dangled from the skyscraper, close but just slightly too far away for accuracy, Natharis watched. He raised his gun and squinted one eye, targeting the short length of cable between the fugitive and the building. What the hell, he thought, and pulled the trigger. The crack of the shot echoed through the urban canyon. McCain's screams bounced from windowed wall to windowed office. He fell, plunging to the street, towards the unwary crowds of business people and families on pleasant day trips. Natharis bolted for the edge of the outcrop and clenched his fists nervously. The other Shatteran zealots had grafted explosives to their hearts. They'd smuggled bombs inside their chests in hopes that glorious martyrdom might one day be theirs. And now McCain was plummeting towards a street lined with infidels. The roar of engines ushered in the judicial drone. It swooped in from above the skyline and hovered in McCain's path. The crowds on the street dispersed in a panic, rushing away from the terrifying sight above them, until they left a circular clearing below the drone and its target. Natharis exhaled and stepped back. He, and the judiciary, had managed to catch McCain alive. So far as he knew, there were no casualties, except for a commuter or two with a stray bump or bruise. The Colonial media would immediately devour the story. Natharis only hoped that the excited, patriotic reporters wouldn't utter his name, and that the precinct wouldn't offer it in the first place. He wasn't one to seek glory or fame or the blind admiration of strangers. As far as he was concerned, he was just doing his job. There you go. Scene 1 of the Aetherverse, skipping the prologue. The Aetherverse has a lot of action. It's just kind of a fun, sort of big, grand scale sci-fi story. It's like a really big kind of conspiracy plot. It's fun. Like Devils in Sunday Hats is kind of an angsty book. It has its comedic elements, but you can tell that I had, like, at least at that point in my life, had a lot of mommy issues. So it's, that's all there. The Aetherverse has like my political ideology in there. It's slightly more conservative than I am because Eugene is. I'm more libertarian. Regardless, I stand by the message of it. Anyway, if you're interested in sci-fi, or if you like that kind of political stuff, or if you are on my political side, I think this is something you'd probably appreciate, especially since people on either the libertarian side or conservative side, even though I would never call myself a conservative really, people on that side are constantly whining about how people on the political left really dominate dominate the culture, whether it's like academia or, public schools or literature or cinema, all of that kind of stuff. They're always saying, well, like, the left like dominates all of that. Well, how about you produce something then to contribute to this, and then maybe it wouldn't all be left-wing stuff. So here I am. Here's the Aetherverse. This is my contribution to my side of the political aisle in terms of this alleged culture war that everyone's talking about. So if you're interested, there is a link, as always, in the description. That is also available for free to people who are on Kindle Unlimited, because it is part of KDP Select now. Thank you again to my viewer who suggested that, because it is worth giving it a shot again. So I enrolled that. So anyway, check that out if you want to. If you don't agree with me politically and you're the type who is easily offended, I would say avoid this at all costs. But anyway, next week I'm going to start doing educational stuff again. I just really didn't feel like talking about running social media ads today. So there you go. That is the Aetherverse. You've now heard my sci-fi. You've also heard a preview of my general fiction. And if you liked it, leave a comment. If you hated it, feel free to leave that too. I don't mind. Stay tuned for next week when I start talking about informative things again. So again, thank you for watching. God bless.